Yes, sir, David. And first of all, I want to thank you for having me on the show. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to meet you and to share my message.
You're welcome.
So prior to March 18th, 2015, I was a seemingly average, ordinary 40-year-old husband and father of three. I had a partner, Becky, and together we had three fantastic kids, Josh, Seth, and Anna. She and I were both teachers. She taught at the local high school here in New Ulm, Minnesota. I was an online teacher. Yes, I've been teaching online well before the pandemic. And I also like to run. I ran anything from 5Ks to half marathons, an occasional marathon when I was feeling really unwise. I won't say stupid, but unwise, because I always had good intentions, but I always lacked the proper training to do well. And as you can see behind me, if you're listening, if you're watching this, I'm also a big geek. I had been, and I still am. And we may talk about that in a little bit. But on March 18th, everything changed, though I didn't know it was going to. I was helping Becky get the kids ready for school, as she taught at the high school and the kids were going to kindergarten and daycare respectively. She needed some help, and I'm a good guy. I like to help my wife out. So I picked up my younger son, Seth, who was 2 at the time, and started flying him to our detached garage where the van was. Well, I veered too far to the right and I scraped the back of my right hand on my garage wall. Well, I looked at it. 'Tis but a scratch for my Monty Python fellow friends out there. No bleeding, no problem. So I put him in the car seat, buckled him up, kissed them all goodbye, and then went on my way back into the house as they went on their way to their respective places. I washed off my wound and then started my day of online teaching. 3 days later, I wake up to see a lacrosse ball-sized bump on my right elbow. I usually don't wake up like that, so I decided to go to the urgent care clinic and have it checked out. The doctor said that it was probably bursitis, which is an inflammation of the bursa sac in our joints, and I should keep an eye on it. So I went home and kept an eye on it and watched it grow and grow and grow until my right arm was 3 times the size of my left. In comic book parlance, I was the Incredible Hulk in mid-transformation.
Just the one arm, though.
Yes, just the one arm. Yet I wasn't very angry and smashy. I was more sicky and tiredy. Very lethargic, nauseous. The arm was tender to the touch. So Becky found a babysitter for the kids, and then she drove me to the emergency room where they quickly admitted me because, hello, giant right arm. And they found something else was going on that we didn't see at first. While they were taking my vitals, they found that they couldn't get a regular rhythm to my heart. They couldn't find the blood pressure. I mean, they know it was blood pressure. They couldn't get a solid read on. Turns out I had developed sepsis.
Oh, wow.
And for those who don't know what sepsis is, it's a reaction that the body has to a foreign agent that has entered it. One of the reactions that happens during sepsis is that a chemical is pumped into your bloodstream to ward off said agent. Funny thing about sepsis is that alone could kill you. So I had poison coursing through my veins and a ginormous right arm. It wasn't the craziest Saturday night I've ever experienced, but it was definitely top 5. They kept me overnight for observation because they wouldn't let me go home with sepsis. And in the morning, that attending doctor walked up to me in my hospital bed and uttered the phrase, uttered a couple sentences I will never forget. She said, "Mr. Gordon, this is beyond us. We can do nothing more for you here. Where do you want to go?" And I quickly said Mayo, which it stands for the Mayo Clinic. It's like the Cher or Beyonce of hospitals. You just say Mayo, people know what you're talking about. Not only did I say Mayo because of its reputation, but because Becky's parents, Bill and Dee, lived in Rochester, Minnesota, where it was located, about 2 hours east of New Ulm. And so I knew that Becky, the kids, and Max the dog would have a place to stay for I was sure 2 or 3 days this would take to resolve itself. No problem. So they fly me to Rochester, and it's there at St. Mary's Hospital where they officially diagnosed me with necrotizing fasciitis, also known as flesh-eating bacteria. So once they know what's going on, they quickly prep me for surgery and put me under essentially for 5 days. At that time, a number of surgeries had to take place. The first surgery was to clean out and remove all the infected tissue and skin that was affected by the necrotizing fasciitis. They had to remove every single bit of bacteria, or the whole process would start again. So they get that cleaned out. They found that the infection had started at the back of my right hand, gone through my arm, past my shoulder, to the base of my neck, down through my chest, around my rib cage, and up through my back.
Wow.
When they cleared out that area, they found that the infection had gone so far into my right arm that they were sure they would have to amputate. They told Becky this. They were prepping to, I'm sure they had like a bandsaw or something, I mean, a hacksaw to really clean it off, 21st century medicine at its best. But thankfully, while they were prepping for the second surgery, the occupational therapist in attendance saw that it still had hand function. So they decided to save the arm by extracting what would it be in centimeters? A 40-inch by 40 centimeter by 10 centimeter flap of skin from my left thigh and place it on my right hand and forearm. And since this is my thigh on my hand, I call this my thand. Copyright pending. But now this is where my story, David, starts to become a medical version of when you give a mouse a cookie. Because I had this problem to take care of. They saved my arm, but now I have a huge gaping hole in my left leg that they couldn't close normally or naturally. So what they elected to do was they extracted my vastus lateralis, which is the outermost quadricep muscle in your thigh. So I now have a tri instead of a quad. And then they installed a shoestring type contraption on the underside of the wound. And then on the outside, they installed a pair of knobs on either side of the wound that over time they would tighten to close that gaping hole. And I'm not going to show you right now, but it basically looks like a shark bite. So it's about what would it again be, like 40 centimeters long. It's pretty cool looking, actually. But then they had to still cover up the area on my upper right hand side that was, they had all the flesh and tissue extracted. So they took a skin graft harvester, which I call a cheese slicer on steroids, and ran it up and down my back and my thighs to get skin grafts to place on those areas. So that took up about 5 days when I was in a coma. When I woke up, I was greeted by first my brother, who had actually flown in from Michigan. As soon as Becky had told him what I was going through, he found the first flight out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and flew to the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then found his way down to Rochester to stay with us for a week and a half, sometimes even sleeping in the hospital, just so he can get the latest update on my condition. So I saw him, and then earlier or a little later, I saw Becky and Bill and they kind of filled me in a little bit on what had happened the last 5 days. And then they left me, and I was left there to presumably go to sleep, but I hardly slept that night. I was starting to take in everything that was going on. And when I started doing that, David, I was visited by another form of bacteria. They had taken out the flesh-eating bacteria, but now I had personal bacteria to deal with. Negative thoughts that were invading my mind when I was thinking about what I had gone through. And this bacteria took form of questions. What was I going to look like when I fully recovered, if I fully recovered? What was I going to be able to do physically? How was my mental state going to be when I got done with this? What were my relationships going to be like with Becky, the kids, other family members, friends, colleagues? How were we going to recover from this financially? I ended up spending the entire last quarter of my school year in the hospital, and I had run out of sick days, early into my hospital stay. And as it turns out, I am now the proud owner of $1 million arm. So when I started thinking about these questions, I really didn't have any positive answers. I usually am a positive guy, but I was struggling a bit because I didn't have the answers to those questions. Luckily, though, Becky helped me out. Early in my recovery, during one of her daily visits, she started telling me about how people were helping us out in our various social circles. Our neighbors were snow blowing our driveway, shoveling our walkways. And because it's still late March, which in Minnesota is like, even though it's spring on the calendar, it's winter round 2. People were stopping by Bill and Dee's house to check on the kids and Becky, drop off food, and even toys and clothing for the kids. Because it turned out that they weren't there for 2 or 3 days. They had stayed there for 2 weeks. And they had virtually nothing of their own to wear or to play with. People were donating money to a GoFundMe account that one of Becky's classmates from high school had set up that more than covered the lost wages I incurred from that last quarter of school when I wasn't teaching. And of course, my brother, Jeff, he had shown up from Michigan for a week and a half. He bought me an iPad to help me, spend some time binging watching things and playing games while I was recovering. When Becky told me all of this, that personal bacteria washed away, David. And I was left with what now I call, and you just refer to as, the attitude of gratitude, or TAG for short. And it took form in 3 questions. The first question was, what good things do I have in my life? Now, when we ask ourselves that question, I'm going to ask you that question, David. When you think about the good things in your life, what do you usually think of?
Family, usually family, my health, where you look at those 2 things prospectively. Yeah.
Yes, and many people do that. And I did as well. I thought of my family, my friends, my faith, my house, my job. But I quickly started thinking about, well, those are great. I mean, those are fantastic to have. But what about those small things, those seemingly insignificant parts of our lives that actually bring us that daily dose of joy? So I thought of the show Daredevil on Netflix that actually dropped while I was in the hospital. And so I was able to binge watch that show and really enjoy it without having to worry about doing schoolwork or watching the kids. All I had to do was lay back and recover. And so I really enjoyed that show. I also thought about how I didn't have to worry about the sun shining in my eyes when I lay in my hospital bed. And I know that sounds very random, but when you are sequestered or confined to one space for an extended period of time, and you don't have to ask someone for one more favor, that really becomes a godsend. And then I thought about the hospital pizza. David, what is your experience or opinion of hospital food?
Best food of my life.
You're the first person who said that.
Everyone says the Jello tastes good, and I recently just had hip surgery, so I had a really good time with the hospital food.
Well, that's good for you. That's good for you. For me, the hospital pizza was phenomenal. I maybe we had the same cook, and maybe he or she flew up to Ontario and back down to Rochester. But yeah, most people say that their hospital food experience is a little more negative. But I just remember the hospital pizza being just fantastic. I look forward to every time I could order it. Maybe it was because I hadn't had pizza in a month since I had been in the hospital, but man, it hit the spot every time. And even now I do this on a daily basis. I think about, for example, door hinges. When's the last time you thought about a door hinge, David?
Never.
Exactly. They're just there. But when they don't work, they get on your mind really quick. And then when you install that door hinge and the door is working properly again, you're thankful that you have properly working door hinges. And so I think about how blessed I am to have door hinges that work. I think about Post-it notes, because they help me, make notes that I can send them with my kids in their lunches, or I can remind myself to do something that my wife will yell at me if I didn't do otherwise, or she will strongly remind me of it. And then I think about my right armpit, as most people do. My right armpit is covered in skin grafts. Skin grafts are non-porous, which means they don't sweat. I can make a stick of deodorant last for 6 months just because of using it on one armpit. And also, I am a master at the polar plunge, because not only are skin grafts non-porous, they lack nerve endings, and they have very far fewer nerve endings than regular skin. So while everyone's shivering, when they jump out, most of me, I'm thinking, whoa, I could go again. This is awesome. So by thinking of the small things in our lives, we feel that we are richer than what our bank account might show. And we really have a lot going for us. And it really helps pass the day with a more positive mindset, because I'm not saying I don't have bad days, but by thinking of what is going on in my life, I should phrase that. I don't have bad days. I have bad moments, but those don't turn into bad days, because I can think of all the good things in my life that I have going on, not just the big things, but the small things. And it really helps put into perspective how bad those bad things are. And it turns out more often than not, they're not really that bad. They're inconvenienced, or they kind of suck to go through, but they could be a lot worse. So that is the T in TAG, thinking of all the good things in your life, not just the big things, but the small things. A stands for acknowledging the appreciated. So when I was doing this, when I first was thinking about the people in my life I appreciated, I thought of the big groups again, the people who share my faith, family, friends, colleagues, neighbors. But then I also thought of my best friend from Montana, who flew in from Helena to spend a weekend. He and his wife hung out with us, and they obviously did not need to, but he's my best friend. We're like brothers. So he came out and saw us, and that was fantastic. But then I thought about the medical professionals, not just the doctors who did the surgeries, or that occupational therapist who, kept me from being called lefty for the rest of my life, but the nurses especially, because not only were they professional and helped me on my road to recovery, but they actually became friends of mine. One story I love to tell is when you are in the hospital for an extended period of time, they often put a poster on the wall in your hospital room. And mine was called the Getting to Know You poster. And they have a bunch of questions on there so people can surprisingly enough, get to know you. One of the questions on mine was favorite movie. Now, David, you've seen the posters behind me of the Ninja Turtles and Iron Man. You heard me quote Monty Python, and you probably guessed I'm a big Star Wars nerd. So you could probably guess what my favorite movie is. That's right, Blazing Saddles. So I had them put Blazing Saddles on the poster. The Monday morning, Chris, the head nurse, she practically ran into my room, and she was so excited she almost couldn't talk. She was stuttering over her words. She said, Chris, I was at a garage sale and I saw this and it reminded me of you, and here it is. She bought me a DVD copy of Blazing Saddles from a garage sale.
Wow.
I am just a part of her job. I am nothing more than an item on her to-do list. But the fact that she not only thought of me when she saw that movie in that box at the garage sale, but she cared enough to buy it for me and then give it to me the next time she saw me, makes that copy of Blazing Saddles not only just something that I would treasure, it's one of my prized possessions. Not because of its market value, but because of the love and friendship in which it was given. And so I will always love and share my admiration for those nurses. Now, David, I have a little activity for you and your listeners that will help you increase your appreciation of someone. I call it the AAA, augmenting, actively augmenting appreciation. So the AAA, actively augmenting appreciation. First of all, I want you to think of someone in a social circle in which you two share, and then take them out of that circle, only temporarily. You'll put them back in. Once you have the person out of that social circle that you share, you've severed all the ties you have with that person, and you're looking at that person on their own. Now I want you to think of all the good things that person does to better the world around them. Think of what a good parent they are. Think of what a good friend they are to other people, not you, other people. Think about how well they do their job. Think of all the great things they do to make the world a better place. Once you've done that, put them back into that social circle you two share, and you realize, wow, I have a relationship with this fantastic human being that it should just make your appreciation of them even greater. I like to use my wife, Becky, as an example. Yes, she's my wife, my partner, my best friend. But when I take her out of that social circle that we share and I see her on her own, I see that she's a fantastic mother. She's a loving daughter and sister. She's a brilliant teacher, a fantastic musician, a great athlete. She has a wicked sense of humor, is almost as geeky as I am, but she plays it closer to the vest. She is a benefit to the world and our community. I put her back into that social circle that we share. She's still all of those things, but now she's also my wife, my partner, my best friend to boot. How lucky am I? And so by actively augmenting our appreciation of people, we find that we are surrounded by fantastic individuals and who should hear our admiration of them on a daily basis. And so that's the A in TAG. Then there's the G, and this really gets TAG going. It's giving others a reason to be grateful. Now in the hospital, I really couldn't do a lot. I maybe messaged on people on social media, maybe gave to a couple of their own GoFundMe accounts, but I really couldn't do much physically. It was when I was discharged that I really took action. I started running again, and I would pick up trash on the road or on the sidewalk or in someone's yard without getting too trespassy. I would mow our neighbors' lawns if I saw that they were getting long and they were on holiday. Or like recently, I just shoveled our neighbors' walkways and snowblower, or their driveways. If I had my snowblower, right now it's in the shop. Another story, but it's all good. It'll get fixed soon before the second snowstorm, I hope. And I would do the classic of opening doors for people.
Mm.
And it's this one that I find that people really undervalue, because at any given point, David, someone is having the worst day of their lives. We never know what that takes, how that takes shape, but they are. But by holding a door for someone, you're letting them know that even for a brief moment, that you recognize them and you want to help them out in even the smallest way. The beauty of all those examples I gave is that they cost me zero monies, but to the recipient, it could be priceless. And of course, you can give things that of market value. You can buy someone a coffee who's behind you. So when we would drive to Michigan to visit my brother and his family and other friends there, that's where I grew up, we would have to drive along the Illinois tollway. And before it went all virtual, they would have pay stations. Once in a while, I would pay for the person behind me. And I don't expect them to drive, to catch up to me and wave and say thank you. But I want them to realize that, hey, I just try to make their day better. Maybe they could do the same for someone else. Mm-hmm. And so by giving others a reason to be grateful, that's where the sharing of T.A.G really comes in, because you want people to realize, hey, you have a lot going for you. I'm not saying your life is perfect. We'll talk about how I feel about perfection in a little bit, but life rarely is perfect. And if it is, it's a brief glimpse. But if you can make someone's life a little better, they really appreciate that, or at least that's the hope. And you want them to not only realize that, but you want them to share that feeling with others. And so that's how T.A.G works, especially if you tell the person, hey, you know what? Why don't you go do this for someone else? Or, hey, right now, I want you to think of something in your life that makes your life a little better or makes you smile. Or, hey, you might think of someone that has helped you out recently, not me, someone else, and tell them about it and tell them how you appreciate that.
That is amazing. That is amazing. I love your energy. I love your mindset of being a citizen of the world. I honestly believe that even prior to your injury that happened, that you were generally just a nice person.
Thank you.
And because despite everything, and I truly believe that even if you got injured and let's say you weren't a nice person, you turned to a nice person, it's hard to continue that. It is something that you were either born with or instilled with at birth. So I must thank your parents as well and those around you for instilling that mindset and that appreciation for others and appreciation to those small things. I love what you mentioned about the door hinge. And I do something every day. And I think one thing that we forget to stay thankful for is I say to myself, as soon as I get up, I'm thankful to being alive, because everything else after is just a bonus. Mm-hmm. Everything after that. As soon as I wake up, I'm thankful. After that, if I'm able to walk, if I'm able to talk, I'm able to go downstairs and boil a cup of water, drink tea or whatever it might be, that's just a bonus on top of waking up the next day. And I do like that. And I like the thing that it's just those small things that we forget to be grateful for. And it's those small things in life is that gives us our joy, like you mentioned earlier. You mentioned, this is quite interesting. I love this. Your story, I gotta stop saying your story, your experience. It's that nail, and it all started with a nail.
Mm-hmm.
And you got scratched by the nail. And a lot of people, like you said, they'll just walk out and just wash it off, or not even wash it out, wash it off and go about their business. You washed it off and probably took care of it, whatever it might be, but it still affected you. From that, are you now like very cautious of getting scratches and so on and so forth now, or?
I think I'm a little more quick to wash it off thoroughly, but I am not a germaphobe, and I don't overreact when I get a cut. I just am a little more knowledgeable how to take care of it. But when I talked with my surgeon about this, I asked him, so what are the chances of me getting this again? And my surgeon, Dr. Bakri, said, Chris, you're the first marathon runner we've ever met who contracted this. So your guess is as good as ours, because usually people who contract NF, necrotizing fasciitis, they have some there's some comorbidity. Either they have, some immunodeficiency syndrome or situation. They might have diabetes. There's usually something else going on that allows this to occur. And for me, there had been group A strep in the area, Streptococcus pyogenes, but again, the chances of that happening to someone who a week before ran a 5K in under 19 minutes 29 seconds was very rare. So it was just one of those perfect cocktails. Had an open wound, there's strep in the area. So it is what it is. And I know that some people see that as defeatist, but I'm not going to jump in the DeLorean and try to go back and change it, because there's no use. I don't know anyone who owns a DeLorean. So I'm out of luck in that aspect. But all I can do is just live the best life forward that I can.
So I was actually scrolling to show you, I'm not sure if you can see that. So that was my fingers a few years back.
Oh, wow.
And I did something, no, it wasn't scratch nail. I opened up a metal seal thinking I was Superman. And I literally tore the tendons in all three of these fingers and these two fingers. And I did that at work. And I literally said, you know what, I need to clean it. So I went to the washroom, washed off my hands, and I got a big, the hand pump, the hand sanitizer.
Yes.
And I pumped it, the foam one. I was like, this is going to hurt, but it's okay. I'm gonna kill all the bacteria. And I just like did that. And it was just like numbing through my whole, I felt numb.
Oh, wow.
I was like, you know what? I'm not going to the hospital. I'm fine. I taped up, I put Band-Aids all over my fingers. And I just continued to work for some stupid reason. And I stayed at work for like another 4 hours, went home. I'm just like, okay, I think I'm okay. And then people were just like, yeah, you're going to the hospital now. Went to the hospital and they looked at me and they're just like, you're an idiot. Why didn't you just come straight to the hospital? So as you can see, I got stitches into my fingers, and you don't really think about how fragile our body is. And I think I could have had something similar to you, because it's metal that tore open my fingers. And again, I just left it without being treated. At that same time, got the stitches, got the tetanus shot. And I'm just like, okay, maybe it's something we have to look towards, despite us feeling superhuman at times, that we are really just fragile in this world. And anything and anything can put us down for as long as they want to. You're a runner. I'm also a runner, which is fantastic. I never knew you were a runner before this. So it's nice to hear that you are a runner. And I haven't ran a full marathon as of yet. I've completed a lot of 5K, 10K, and I've ran, I believe, 3 or 4 half marathons so far. But the fact that you're hitting that 19 under 19 in a 5K, that is fantastic. It kind of sucks
Okay.
because we did touch base on this earlier. I did have hip surgery.
Mhm.
I was hitting at that point running. I think I was on my way to under 20 minutes for the 5K as well, but then
Nice.
again got sidelined with the hip injury. But again, it goes back to what I said earlier. It's just we're very fragile in this world, and we really
Yeah.
need to.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was gonna say, I'm going through a situation with my hamstrings. I was pretty active this last year, and my hamstring said, dude, we need a rest. And so right now I am scheduled to go to the physical therapist that go to a program specifically designed for runners. And they're going to work over my hamstrings, because not only do I have a long-term goal of qualifying for the Boston Marathon before 2030, but I'm also 4 kicks away from receiving my first degree black belt in Taekwondo.
Oh, nice.
Thank you.
Nice.
And a lot of it, all those, I have 2 slow motion kicks and a 360 jumping side kick.
Mhm.
And all of those depend on strong hamstrings.
Yes.
And right now I don't have that. And so, yeah, you're exactly right about the body. You know, we are at this, it's a dichotomy. We're
Mhm.
both, our bodies are both extremely resilient, but as you also said, very, very fragile. One little thing can knock the whole system down. Yeah.
Exactly.
So like when I scratched my hand on that wall, it, like you said, didn't look like much at the time, but apparently it was more than I thought. Like my Transformers, they were more than meets the eye.
That keyword, which is flesh-eating bacteria, I've seen on internet and also National Geographic, the worst side of it. What was your first thought when they mentioned that to you?
At the time, they were getting me ready for surgery, because obviously they knew that I had something going on, and they were filling me full of chemicals, and not chemicals, I guess in a way, of painkillers. And I remember the surgeon sitting across from me. I was already in a wheelchair, and he was telling me what they're going to do for the surgeries. And this was a speech I'm sure he gave hundreds of times before to people who were very sad, very scared, crying, maybe, hoping they won't die. I was like a drunk, cocky Professor Xavier. I was sitting in that wheelchair, so my head lolling back and forth. All right, let's do this. Let's go. Because I think in my mind, I was thinking, well, I'm at the Mayo Clinic. If I'm going to die, it's not going to be due to lack of trying.
Mhm.
So I would have started cutting myself, I guess, if I had the chance, but I really threw him off. He said later, yeah, you took me aback a bit. I've never experienced that before, but I was very cocky. I was like, let's do this. Let's go. So, which is usually not like me. I'm more confident than cocky, but yeah, I was another person right before the surgery, apparently.
And how was your, I guess your wife and your kids when they first heard, like, well, going through all this, because that you mentioned as well that you went through a personal negativity as well after the recovery, but then at the same time, your family were going through again an also type of negativity. It's that, how is Chris going to be after surgery? How is dad going to be? Can dad do this? Can dad do that? Can my husband do this? Can my husband do that? How were they throughout all of this?
I like to talk about my love of superheroes and the MCU, but my wife Becky is an actual superhero, because she stayed so strong. And there were times that she admitted that, well, not admitted, but just said that, she would cry with my brother as they were dealing that first week, because at one point I had a 3 in 10 chance of survival. And again, we didn't know how I was going to recover from this. So yeah, she stayed strong. She kept the family going for, for the next 4 months. Even when I was discharged, I still had some limitations as I was healing and getting back into shape. But she kept the ship going. She made sure the kids got to where they needed to go. She, taught at a, high professional level like she always does. She, kept everyone up to date on what was going on. And so, yeah, I am always in awe of her and what she did and still does. The kids were a little younger. I know my son Josh, who was 6 at the time, he was he was more interested in what had going on here to really be scared at the time. I know that he was going through some stuff though too, about me not being there, but we worked it through. And the twins were 2, they turned 3 while I was in the hospital. So we actually had a birthday party for them in the hospital, so I could be there. But they were more fascinated with my staples in my hands from my fan, but they all made it through, and we're a very, very strong family.
That's really good to hear. Cheers to Becky for holding it down, to tell the truth. The last thing I'd like to ask you, and there could be more for this questions, but the one thing I wrote down and the key word in all of that is gratitude. So to you, what is gratitude?
Gratitude basically is what keeps us from going into that pit of despair. Because, and this is where I'm going to bring up that concept of perfection. Perfection at best, is a fleeting mirage. When you look at a billboard or look at a television ad or some kind of posts that is supposed to convey perfection, you don't know how long it took to create that image. Because as soon as the picture's taken, the model gets off the stage, she wipes away the makeup, the car that looks so pristine in the shot could get a dent or get some rust on it. And so always striving for perfection is I want to say a fool's errand, but it's futile. And it keeps people from doing more because of that fear of failure. I instead like to go for greatness. If there's something that you're trying to achieve, be consistent in your practice, be diligent in your efforts, and be perseverant in tough times. Because if you keep those three things going, sure, once in a while you might achieve perfection on some level, but you will always be great. And so if you keep practicing T.A.G, if you keep practicing the just noticing the good things in your life, whether it be a door hinge or a nice pint glass that you can squeeze, or even something as simple as a pencil. If you see the item for the value it gives you instead of how much it costs you, you're going to find that you're surrounded by riches. And then if you extend it to the people in your social circles, you're going to find that you are surrounded by awesome, inspiring people. But it's up to you to start taking those steps to notice that. And I think that's where gratitude comes in. Because every day we have a choice. You said yourself, David, the first thing you do when you wake up is you're being thankful for being alive. That's a choice that you've made. We all have to make that choice. And gratitude is one of the best choices we can make, because it helps us realize that even though we might have bad moments, that doesn't have to turn our day, that doesn't have to turn to a bad day.
I love that. I love that. And you touch base on something that I've mentioned in my previous podcasts, is that one, we have to really, honestly, we have to surround ourselves with people that are great as well. And the second thing that you mentioned throughout all this is really understand who those people are, because those people around us also make us great as well. Because if it was when you're in those tough situations, as in when you're in the hospital, if you didn't have those people that did those things, show those gratitude towards you, that support system, different story we'll be having right now. Very, very different story. T.A.G probably would not be invented right now. So it really is, we have to be grateful of those small things, grateful for the people around us, but at the same time, acknowledge them. Because despite us, like you mentioned earlier, when you take somebody out and then you see that person and their fullness, and you put them back into that social circle, they still are unique, and they are what make your circle complete.
Yes.
Going with T.A.G, what did you do with T.A.G? Did you create a website, a personal coach? Bring me more into T.A.G.
Definitely. Well, at the beginning of last year, 2020, I decided that I was going to become a speaker. I knew I wanted to share my story with people, but until January 2020, I had tried a couple different things and they didn't pan out. They just weren't for me. There are too many aspects of those endeavors I didn't enjoy. So I decided I need to share my message. I need to speak. Well, I got one speaking engagement under my belt when COVID hit. So I got a taste of it, but I decided, well, if I can't speak in front of a crowd, I'm going to speak online. So I started a podcast called Scar Bearers. And I started with sharing my story, but then I realized I'm not going to last long on a podcast if I'm just sharing my story. So I started interviewing others so they could tell their tales of trial and triumph. And as of this recording, I am on episode 85.
Awesome.
And I have at least 10 interviews I'm looking forward to right now, having 4 actually this coming week. So I started my podcast. I now am speaking more. I've spoken to schools. I've spoken to a running expo. I've spoken at a comic book convention. And I'm going to be in another place I'll be speaking is at a convention for mothers of multiples that a friend of mine runs. And being a father of multiples, I figure I fit there. But moms are also in need of gratitude as well. But my main focus, my main audience are young adults, high schoolers, college students, those in the military, because while I hope they never contract necrotic and fasciitis, we all know they have their own struggles to go through. And by having greater gratitude, positivity, and resilience, they can overcome those challenges and become the leaders we need them to be so that they can make the world a better place. So I do speaking engagements online, virtually and in person. I actually do have a website called chrisdtgordon.com where I talk about my speaking engagements. I have places for people to reach out to me. I have links to my Facebook, my Instagram, my LinkedIn. I also have a free T.A.G one sheet that people can download and print on their walls, put in the office, wherever they feel they need an increase in gratitude. I even have a merch store called Chris D.T. Gordon's T.A.G and Pop Shop, where people can buy a sweatshirt like this. I call this the T.A.G Explainer. because it has the TAG logo and has the T, the A, and the G explained. And I just had this released. At the end of every episode, I ask my guest, what is your favorite dinosaur?
Stegosaurus.
Because I had come upon a Facebook meme a couple years ago where someone was lamenting, no one ever asked me what my favorite dinosaur is. So I figured I would be that person. I'm going to ask that question. And so now I have t-shirts made up for it. I don't have my favorite on here, Ankylosaurus, but I figured these three would, get people's attention. I have sweatshirts that people can buy. And if your listeners are compelled to go to my website and go to the Tag and Pop shop and get a shirt or a beanie that I have, mine's being used right now, but it keeps my bald head warm. Your audience members can use Tag Pop 1 to get 20% off of everything they buy at the merch store. And I also have news articles and magazine articles that I've written, as well as you mentioned earlier, the news segment that was done on me. I have that on the website, and I also have a pretty nice demo video that was made for people who are interested in seeing my story and how I can present it to others.
Wow.
So short answer, yes, I've done a few things with Tag.
And all this started with a nail.
Yeah, actually a wall.
That's awesome. A wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is awesome. I love this. I love what you took this incident to, and you change a negative situation into such a positive aspect of life, a positive way of thinking. Really is amazing. It's amazing. And I don't really use that. I don't use that word often. So I'll give you that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any final thoughts? Because that was, I'm not sure if you have any, but please, if you have any, please go ahead.
I will reiterate, David, to pass on perfection and go for greatness. Like I said before, at its best, perfection is fleeting. And at its worst, it's maddening, because it could drive us to, I don't want to say insanity because it seems a little dramatic, but it could fill us with unhealthy expectations of what reality is. But if you go for greatness, if you are consistent, diligent, and perseverant, you might attain perfection once in a while, but you will always be great.